好雨就快要来了，要注意什么啊？
先看看我们家附近水沟通不通，会不会淹水。多多留意气象报告，看雨大不大，河水高不高。招牌鹰架要固定，注意车。
巨人家具新开幕，卖场最大，没货源，价格保证最便宜，各厂牌名画全面2.9折，欧风长子12000，高级皮沙发9900，进口布沙发1万块，服务最好，送货不加钱。民权大桥旁，电话27923888，27923888，巨人家具，家具巨人。
东湖健全中医多为名医师及医护人员竭诚服务，采用全面电脑连线作业，提高医疗服务品质。东湖健全中医位于台北市内湖区东湖路128号。健全中医在。东湖健全中医服务专线02-2633-7511，2633-7511。
现货第一手消息得到的往往是主力的陷阱，唯有专业的投资分析及正确的理财观念，才是您股市获利的致富保障。嘉阳投顾互惠专线02-2518-0102，2518-0102。
街头上出现了一号人物，喜欢溜进客厅打扫电视，我们叫他 TV Keeper 电视妙管家，他即将出现在您家。
您现在收看的是华人商业台。
Golf in Indonesia, my Indonesia, endless beauty of diversity.
One channel goes exclusive.
You must have power to overwhelm.
Upfront,
challenges,
and in-depth with Asia's leaders.
A government that can share power.
CNBC, staying on top of the politics, the issues, bringing you information that affects your investments, your business.
More flexible labor market policy.
Poverty and hopelessness are the biggest weapons of terrorism.
I don't think that floating exchange rate is a solution.
Giving you the edge. CNBC, profit from.
This is CNBC's Business Center. Here again, Ron Insana.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Business Center. My partner, Sue Herrera, has the evening off. And news after the bell tonight that is front and center this evening. The company formerly known as Worldcom is now formally bankrupt for all intents and purposes. A federal judge in New York approved MCI's plan to emerge from the biggest bankruptcy in history. The financial reorganization will pay back most creditors 36 cents on the dollar and erase $35 billion worth of debt. WorldCom filed for bankruptcy protection last year after revealing it had fabricated $11 billion in profits. Also front and center this evening, the battle between money and political power in Russia. It's a dispute that pits President Vladimir Putin against the country's richest man, the head of the Yukos oil empire. Could have serious repercussions for Russia's efforts to reform its own economy. Rob Reynolds has more now from Washington. Rob?
Ron, this is much more than simply a case of a prosecution of a tycoon. It is something much larger than that. And in fact, the turmoil that has erupted with the arrest of Mikhail Khodorkovsky of Yukos is seen as the outcome of a power struggle within President Vladimir Putin's Kremlin. The fight is between pro-business elements that are aligned with the new oligarchs, the people who amassed power and wealth during the Yeltsin era, and they are opposed by a newer faction that surrounds Putin, a faction more closely linked to the former KGB and the new Russian security services. Russian observers see the events of the past week as proof that the KGB faction has won the battle.
Russia
Russia has a serious tilt in the balance of power, and this tilt is in favor of the new Kremlin elite, people with KGB background, people who I think will have tremendous authority and would seek to expand it.
The Russian stock exchange plunged yesterday on news the government prosecutor's office had frozen a huge chunk of Yuko's stock that belonged to Khodorkovsky and his partners. This raised the prospect of a government takeover of the world's fifth biggest oil company. There was an upswing in stocks today, but capital flight has begun. Merger talks between Yukos and ExxonMobil and Chevron have been halted, and investors fear the crackdown on Khodorkovsky may signal a rollback of Russia's post-communist privatization program.
Markets don't like adversity and uncertainty. And in the next 2 to 3 months, as we head into Duma elections in Russia and then later presidential elections in Russia in March, with Khodorkovsky sitting in jail till at least December 30, which is the date that's been named for his arraignment, you've got an atmosphere where I don't know that we're going to see a lot of positive news.
President Putin is now in a difficult position. Few doubt that he endorsed the campaign against Khodorkovsky, whom he saw as a potentially powerful political rival. But the strong reaction in the markets and in the Russian business community has forced him to meet with bankers. He met with them last night in an effort to calm those fears. His chief of staff has resigned, apparently in protest. Observers fear Putin may no longer be able to control the KGB faction.
This may sound like a too sharp a metaphor, but they've tasted blood. I mean, not literally, but Putin unleashed a very dangerous force. I'm talking about the people and the methods that they use. Whether Putin will be able to control the operation, it's probably a little early to say, but it looks like he may lose control of it.
In a sign of the disarray in the Kremlin, the Russian Prime Minister today criticized the whole campaign against Yukos and defying Putin's warning not to interfere. He said he was very troubled by this issue of freezing the company's stock. Ron?
All right, Rob, thanks very much. Rob Reynolds in Washington. Stocks ended the week in a choppy session. They closed the day mixed. The Dow Jones Industrial Average just climbed above 9,800, picking up 14.5 points, while the Nasdaq ended fractionally lower at 1932. The Standard & Poor's 500 picked up about 4 and stopped right at what some say is technical resistance at 1,050. The small cap Russell 2000 gave up a couple, but it's been very strong of late. For the week, the Dow gained 2.3%, the Nasdaq climbed 3.6%, the S&P added more than 2%. For the month of October, normally a volatile one, not so this month. The Dow finished up 5.7%, the Nasdaq more than 8%, and the S&P better than 5.5%. Checking U.S. Treasuries, a better day in a tough week with the 2-5 10-year securities moving up in price. So too for the 30-year bond. All gained in price and fell in yield. The dollar ended mixed for the day at 109.90 against the yen, 115.80 against the euro, and just under $1.70 against the British pound. Well, stocks on Wall Street headed higher to close out the first month of the fourth quarter. And here to tell us now what investors should look out for next week is UBS Financial Services Director of Floor Operations, Art Cashin. Good to see you, Arthur.
Well, thank you, Ron. Good to be here.
October was a pretty good month. I mean, everybody was looking for the big correction, and it didn't come. So what happens next?
Well, it's tough to say. The rally since March has had a whole series of moves in which they go up, they consolidate around the high, have some kind of pullback, and then go back up to consolidate around the high again, and then break out, giving you another leg up. It's been kind of a, if the viewers could imagine it, a kind of staircase kind of routine.
In the old days, Art, we'd call that a bull market.
And so far it has done very well. This consolidation around the highs is happening again. Now, the contrary side to that, nothing in Wall Street is unalloyed joy. Sometimes when you flatten out at the top of a move, it can look like exhaustion. So far, there's no real sign of that. It would be clearer exhaustion if you were doing it in extraordinarily high volume and couldn't break out. Now, the frustration was we had terrific numbers with the GDP, and things have not really kicked in since then. People are wondering where that will be. But so far, maybe we can have a November to remember, but not clear yet.
What's important next week, in the first week of November, to keep an eye on?
Absolutely unalloyed will be the payroll numbers. You remember the change in the Fed statement, the FOMC statement that came out, was that they went from seeing the labor area weakening, and now they turned it to stabilizing. That's where they were before they went to weakening. So we're waiting to see, do jobs come with the prosperity? The third quarter was an absolute blowout series of numbers, and Wall Street, unfortunately, is ungrateful. That was my last birthday. What are you going to give me for my next birthday? They're looking to see if it can be sustained in the fourth quarter.
Now, with respect to the market itself, the S&P having a little trouble getting through 1050, how significant, or is this really just a minor resistance level that, if broken, will clear the way for better things?
Well, it gets back to consolidating at the highs and whether you break out and start the new staircase up. And the traders on the floor are looking at the 1050, 1060 area. You get up above 1060, 9800 to 9850 in the Dow. And if you get through those, particularly if you can get through with a little bit more volume than we've had, then I think even the skeptics will concede you probably have another move to the upside. If you flatten out and you can't break through, even with good economic data, then they may think everything's been baked in the cake, and we'll see where we go from there.
All right, thanks, Arthur. Have a good weekend. Good
Okay, you too. Happy Halloween.
And to you as well. Art Cashin, UBS Financial Services Director of Floor Operations. Corporate America is tightening its belt, so why isn't the federal government doing the same thing? That's the headline on the cover of this week's Barron's magazine. Tonight, a sneak peek at what Barron says Washington can do to spend less and become more efficient. Barron's senior editor, Michael Santoli, is here now with that story. Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for being with us.
How you doing?
Fine. You know, everybody talks about the government cutting back spending and doing so in a way that's meaningful. A lot of times it's just campaign rhetoric. You guys have actually found some numbers, right?
Yeah, we have some specific suggestions. We characterize it as kind of low-hanging fruit, but altogether amounts to about $170 billion longer term, which basically comes to about 7% of all non-transfer payment spending at state, local, and federal government levels. So it's real money.
All right, now it's real money. Where is it?
It's in a variety of areas, such as reducing the clerk-to-manager ratio to be in line with the private sector, the service sector and the private sector, which is way out of whack when you look at government numbers. They have far too many clerks and secretaries versus administrators, and that's something that really can be taken care of with things like voicemail. A lot of the things that the private sector has done, the government has not done to the same degree.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit because you have a profile also of home retailer Pier 1. If I recall correctly, when the economy started going south, this is one of the first companies to feel it. Are things looking better here?
They are looking better. It's actually one of the better managed home-related retailing companies. They compete with the likes of Crate and Barrel and Pottery Barn at the higher end, but have better prices, so they have a value orientation. We like their very disciplined expansion plan. They still have a lot of growth ahead of them. About 1,000 stores, might get to 1,700. So yes, it's home-related, but it's not really linked so much to the housing booms per se. It's a lot of stuff that you fill up these big houses with over time, as opposed to right when you buy them.
All right, Michael, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Ron.
Michael Santoli, senior editor for Barron's magazine. Coming up, the consumer more confident in October but spending less in September. We'll explain. Plus, your teenager is driving more than the family car. We'll hear from those who say teens are driving the whole economy. And we'll hear about a cutting-edge media buy for some very traditional advertisers. First, though, Scott Cohn has a preview of what's coming up at Checkpoint. We'll do that and find out what's coming up on Checkpoint right after this.
CNBC Asia. Profit from it.
Why did I come to Dubai? To plant a little tree. 3.5 years later, we are harvesting the fruit. We have grown from 11 people to 360.
Dubai works to make your idea work. You can make decisions fast. This helps our people develop quickly and take responsibility. When they go back to Europe, they are sometimes frustrated by the slowness.
Here, they are closer to the decision. They achieve more.
Socially, they do more too. Everything is here for everybody to enjoy. Including the desert, which, to our surprise, my wife and I love. Dubai itself is like the little tree we planted. It keeps growing.
But to people who share its vision, it promises a lot of fruit.
Why Dubai? In association with Dubai International Airport in Dubai 2003. change that shape our land, the United Arab Emirates. Seizing opportunity, inspiring confidence, fulfilling ambition. Dubai, crossroads of the new global economy.
If it seems things are moving too fast, you need news as it breaks to stay ahead. Dow Jones Newswires provides real-time financial news vital for today's businesses.
Huge gains.
You get access to that comprehensive coverage through CNBC's exclusive partnership with Dow Jones Newswires.
The dollar is still rebounding both against the euro
and get the news as it breaks.
The dollar is higher against the major currencies.
For definitive business and markets coverage in real time, Dow Jones and CNBC.
When it comes to shopping, who makes the decisions in your home? If you're like most American families today, the people making decisions aren't the ones paying for them. According to the annual Roper Youth Report, the influence of consumers aged 8 to 17 have over purchases from food to home decor has increased 10% from year-ago levels. Kerry Silvers is in charge of youth tracking for NOP World, and he's here now with a look at what's behind the trend. Kerry, good to see you. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Now, I have little ones, so they haven't started entirely influencing or making decisions on the spending front, but certainly you have to shell out some cash for the kids. These 8 to 17-year-olds, the tweeners, what are they doing that's different from previous generations?
Well, get ready, because your tweeners, or when your kids become tweeners, they're gonna have your ear right now, and they're much more sophisticated than previous generations. Marketers are actively targeting them right now, and between their sophistication, their tech savviness, and other things, they're going to have a lot of influence in the household and tell you what you're going to be buying.
Now, when I was that age, I mean, nagging was the principal vehicle for getting your parents to shell out some cash. What do these kids do differently?
Well, there's probably a little nagging in there, but there's probably a little bit more of sophisticated nagging, or they know what they're talking about because they are on the internet and they are watching more television, specifically a lot of the cable stations. So if they have more influence in something like home decor, which is one of the trends that we picked up, their kids are starting to watch shows like Trading Spaces, not at a high degree, but somewhat. They're also watching the Food Network and other things. So a lot more sophisticated elements are coming into the kids' households.
Where are they driving the most, though, disposable income and spending?
Well, kids are going to drive, it's going to be technology, it's going to be clothing, it's going to be music. The traditional things that kids spend on and influence on household purchases for food, those remain fairly constant. But it's the new things sort of coming in where you didn't expect kids to necessarily have an influence.
Yeah, now in the old days, I mean, getting your own line in the house was a big deal. Now it's essentially getting your own phone, right?
It's it's having your own cell phone, and if American kids start to mirror what's going on over in Europe with the kids having cell phones, you're going to see an explosion here, not just with teens, but even with 12-year-olds.
What about on the food front? You mentioned that they're watching the Food Network, but they're also, traditional consumers of what we call junk food in this country, and yet now there's a trend away from that. Has that influenced their eating and buying habits in any meaningful way?
Well, it's a delicate balance. There is the fast food, and it is still a very popular item for kids, and it's not going to go away. But they're becoming more aware of how to eat better, and we're seeing some of those numbers sort of creep up for not just teens, but tweens also, the 8 to 12-year-olds. But I will say that fast food still remains strong with both groups.
All right, Kerry, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kerry Silver, consumer trend expert for NOP World. Coming up, Major League Baseball cashes in on the back-home popularity of Japanese players. We'll tell you how. Plus, we'll show you an unconventional venue advertising dollars when Business Center returns.
CNBC Asia. Profit from it.
GE, voice of the customer.
EVA Air is established from 1991. In 1991, we run a GE engine on our 767-300ER. We started to cooperate with GE to have a wholesaling company, so-called Evergreen Aviation Technology Company. That company is a new tri-portable group. GE already helped us establish engine repair station on level 3 repair capability, and we are very happy to work with GE company because they work very efficiency, and also we trust each other. We are very happy and very, feel comfortable to work with GE on that project.
GE, imagination at work.
In a future that knows no boundaries, you need to know where technology and innovation are heading. You need ideas, opportunities, and partnerships with the world's best. You need to be with the world's best entrepreneurs and most enterprising minds. From 27th October to 1st November, you can be part of the power to disrupt and change the future. Global Anthropolis at Singapore. Be there. Register at globalanthropolis.com now.
Only one show goes behind the headlines, looking deep into stories that drive Asia. The Asian Wall Street Journal.
Economy Group.
With exclusive insights from the editors of Asia's premier business newspaper, we bring you a preview of tomorrow's front page, giving you a jump on the business and political news of the day. The Asian Wall Street Journal. Weeknights on CNBC Asia. Only on CNBC Asia. The people who influence the world's economy.
Policy is to encourage countries to adopt market-based rates.
The business leaders whose insights help stay in touch with the business world.
We don't think that hybrid is the only solution.
Opinions you can profit from.
The oil price will be on the high end of historic average.
Some positive signs of a pickup in the residential trading market.
So don't miss out on more of these exclusives. Seen and heard only on CNBC Asia.
Oh, you think things are scary this Halloween? Wait till next year for what its organizers call the network of choice for horror fans, filmmakers, authors, and actors. The Horror Channel plans to show a wide variety of classic horror films and offer some ingenious original programming as well. Its creative advisory board includes veteran directors Wes Craven and John Carpenter, and it's already online at www.horrorchannel.com. Well, it's not just great hitting and fielding that Major League Baseball is getting from its high-profile Japanese players. Japan's advertising powerhouse Dentsu is paying the Major Leagues $46 million a year for the next 6 years for the Japanese TV rights to American games. That's more than 3 times what baseball was getting under the previous deal with Dentsu. In tonight's Across America, a look at growing corporate sponsorships in the world of rodeo. But not the typical rodeo most Americans envision. No, these rodeos are just a bit different. And here's Garrett Glazer to explain.
Rodeo, the heritage of the great American West. Livestock, cowboys, patriotism. Drag queens?
Why are you shocked? We all got to work together. We got to live on this earth together.
For Denver-based businessman John Beck, gay rodeo isn't simply a hobby, it's, well, part of daily life.
Well, I just turned 55. I've been riding a horse since I was 3 months old.
Beck was among the competitors vying for cash prizes at the 17th Annual International Gay Rodeo Association US Finals, recently held here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You'll find everything here from bronc riding and calf roping to steer riding and goat dressing. And you'll find some things you won't see at other rodeos.
The demographics of folks who come here are across the gamut, from folk that are born and raised in livestock to people that are looking for camaraderie.
Corporate America is growing increasingly friendly as well. The spirits industry is here, and automakers, some of whom sponsor their own employees. By far, though, the biggest presence at gay rodeos is from brewer Anheuser-Busch and its Bud Light brand of beer. Anheuser pays a reported $6,500 per rodeo for official sponsor status. We don't know why, but Anheuser executives refused our repeated requests to speak about the company's involvement with gay rodeo. American Airlines did talk to us, though. American is the official air carrier for the rodeo. Robin Burr is a national sales manager.
Lots of research has shown that gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender customers do have expendable income. But really it just falls in with our entire company's heart about diversity and recognizing that all of our employees and our customers should be treated with dignity and respect.
If corporate America has finally discovered the economic clout of gay rodeo, it should come as no surprise. Though the demographics of the gay people here are decidedly mixed, one thing unites people: money. If you want to compete in gay rodeo, you're going to spend some.
Most of the competitors will spend probably upwards of $1,500, maybe $2,000, I would say.
Sonny Kerner is 36. He visits 18 rodeos a year.
I do 8 of the 13 events, bull riding and steer riding.
What's Sonny think of the big companies now buying their way into the non-profit gay rodeo circuit?
I think it's long overdue. It shouldn't be any surprise to anybody that the gay and lesbian community has pretty decent expendable income. What goes around comes around, and I think the sponsors that we've had in the past have realized that.
Well, no firm numbers exist on the spending power of gay rodeo aficionados, but MarketResearch.com was out this spring with an estimate that the gay market generates $485 billion in disposable income in the U.S. each year. Doggies, Ron. Have a good week.
You too, Garrett. Thank you. Coming Monday on Business Center, Mr. Spitzer goes to Washington. New York's Attorney General will testify before Senate and House committees about abuses in the mutual fund industry. We will have full coverage. Plus, we begin a series of reports you won't want to miss on extraordinary breakthroughs in medical technology. And that's Business Center for this Friday evening. Thanks for watching. For Sue Herrera, I'm Ron Insana. Coming next, Checkpoint CNBC with Scott Cohn. Good evening, Scott.
Good evening, Ron. A stunning scene outside a Los Angeles courthouse. The man behind the tree that you'll see is a lawyer. He gets shot at by his client. Why did he do it, and why are all those people, those news people, just standing around taking pictures? The story behind the pictures coming up next. And is this where Saddam Hussein is, and is he helping orchestrate the attacks on American forces from here? We'll have the latest as U.S. forces close in and crack down on the village where Saddam was born. Checkpoint CNBC is just around the corner.
Business Center was presented by Cargill. We collaborate, create, and succeed with our customers.
CNBC Asia. Profit from it.
Chinatown is one of my favorite places, with lots of colors and interesting characters, and I love the old shop houses. My friends love having dumplings in a little side street store. I always find the best bargains in Chinatown. I always take my friend to this restaurant in Little India called the New Delhi Restaurant. Good curry, and it's really nice because you get to sit outside and watch the street. The Esplanade is a massive centre with like one place where everyone can perform. After a performance, you always go and have a couple of beers. At Harry's, any musician can get up and play after a certain hour. We have lots of fun. Great jazz bar for a couple of drinks. My must-see places for Singapore are Chinatown, Raffles Hotel, Little India, the Esplanade, and Newton Circus.
China, an emerging economy taking the world by storm. Join CNBC for a unique look inside China at the challenges and the opportunities. From the new International Business Center of Shanghai to the rapidly developing production centers along the coast, CNBC gets behind the headlines to bring you a week of in-depth coverage followed by 2 half-hour specials. Don't miss this special China series, coming soon on CNBC Asia.
New China, brought to you by GE.
The Asian Wall Street Journal, the region's premier business news publication, and CNBC, the world's leading business news network, come together in an exclusive partnership to bring you the news that matters every business day.
The Asian Wall Street Journal newspaper are following the story very closely.
Today's top corporate stories from Asia and around the world. Plus, the latest developments and trends in Asian markets, management, business, and technology. The Asian Wall Street Journal and CNBC. Stay ahead with the business insight that will shape the future.
This new evidence as U.S. forces draw a dragnet around Saddam's birthplace. Finally, rain in the forecast for Southern California, but will it be enough to douse the wildfires? We'll have a live report. Caught on tape, an attorney fights for his life outside a Los Angeles courthouse. Why is this man shooting his lawyer again and again? And how do you like your steak? How about clone? Is it safe? A new finding by the Food and Drug Administration says yes. Dig in, you're at Checkpoint CNBC. Good evening and welcome to Checkpoint CNBC. I'm Scott Cohn in for Tom Costello on this Friday, Halloween, on a day when another U.S. soldier has been killed by a bomb and 2 other soldiers wounded in a separate clash with Iraqis waving pictures of Saddam Hussein. The ominous question, is Saddam himself orchestrating the Iraqi resistance? The senior American officials who see Saddam's hand in the attacks of Americans in Iraq. They say he's been meeting with subordinates, sometimes in moving cars to avoid detection, discussing the attacks and maybe trying to unite a number of anti-American factions. It's a much larger role than U.S. officials acknowledged publicly till now. They've portrayed Saddam as on the run, almost irrelevant. And even now, some U.S. officials tell NBC News that while Saddam may have a role, there is no evidence he's actually orchestrating the attacks. Nonetheless, U.S. forces are clamping down on the area near Hussein's hometown of Tikrit, particularly his birthplace of Uja, surrounding the village with razor wire and ordering every adult resident there to register for ID cards. A U.S. soldier from the 82nd Airborne Division was killed today in a bomb attack near the town of Chaldea, west of Baghdad. And on the outskirts of Baghdad, 2 U.S. soldiers were wounded and 2 Iraqis were killed as U.S. troops tried to clear market stalls from a main road. Well, Chris Whitcomb, of course, is CNBC's global security expert. Chris, how would the U.S. even know that Saddam is actually acting in this, either planning or orchestrating the attacks?
Well, Scott, that's a $64,000 question. They've said for some time now that we're talking about outside interests, foreign terrorists that have come into the country. We're talking about Ba'ath partying loyalists and other insurgents possibly, but they've never narrowed it down. They've said all along they suspect some coordination. They've not said by whom. So if we're now all these months after the May 1st secession of the major war, and they still don't really know what's going on, it's very difficult to come back and say we suspected Saddam Hussein. Does it make sense intuitively? Yes. Do they have any evidence to suggest it specifically? And the answer still is no.
And I mean, how can they tell? I mean, what is the kind of intelligence that they get that tells them whether he's involved and to what extent?
No, that's a really great question, because you're not talking about many of the things they've used in the past, which is satellite and signals intercepts intelligence that they use for military targeting. We're talking about people coming in off the street for some of this information, and some of the people that they've been interviewing. We know they've taken many members of Saddam's regime into custody. They've done interrogations and probably gotten some information, but most of those arrests occurred some time ago, so any information they have is no longer timely. The way they're going to get Saddam Hussein most likely is someone sees him, comes in, offers information, and tries to catch a piece of that very substantial reward.
Let's bring in former CIA officer and former Deputy Director of the State Department Office of Counterterrorism, Larry Johnson. Larry, welcome.
Hi there.
What does this tell you, the fact that we're hearing these reports that perhaps Saddam has a hand, maybe a greater hand than previously thought? What do you make of this?
Excuse my sarcasm, but if U.S. officials are just now figuring out that Saddam might be behind this, you know, what next? They're going to discover that the Pope's Catholic? I mean, come on. This guy, he stayed in power for 20 years as a ruthless... And just because we rolled into Baghdad with tanks doesn't mean that he suddenly went stupid or became, you know, crazy Uncle Festus hiding away in the attic. I think this man's quite capable of reaching out to a variety of folks, Arab nationalists, Iraqis, as well as Muslim extremists, and trying to coordinate attacks. I don't find that surprising at all. What's astonishing is that U.S. officials seem to be sort of catching on here late in the game.
Hi, Larry. It's Chris Whitcomb. Good to see you.
Good to see you, man.
Look, I'll get you going on another one of these things, see if I can spin you up a little bit and talk about the Ba'ath Party network. This is a country that was ruled with an iron fist for decades. It's a country that had huge tentacles from the Saddam Hussein regime. How easy would it be for him to put some of this mechanism back together again? I mean, is he making phone calls? Is he sending emissaries out to do his bidding? How is he actually putting the command and control into place?
I think it's the latter, Chris. It's, you know, working through emissaries, this is very much a clan-based society of person-to-person relationships. So I'm sure that's one of the ways that he's structuring it. And let's not forget that we've become a rallying point for a wide variety of groups, ranging from the Islamic extremists to these nationalists who they don't like foreigners on their soil. The Brits fought them for several years, and I think we're beginning to discover these are not just a bunch of easy customers. They're going to go away overnight.
Larry, how is this likely to play in Iraq? Remember that right after the war ended, or the major combat ended, there was talk about Iraqis not believing that Saddam had fallen. When Uday and Qusay were killed, they didn't believe that. How does this play into the coalition trying to convince the Iraqis that the regime has fallen?
At the end of the day, we've got to be able to convince those people we can keep them safe. And despite all the happy talk in Washington and all the efforts to blame, you know, negative journalism and reporters are focusing on the bad news, we are not keeping the Iraqi people safe. I've heard some, you know, people who try to excuse